I'm going to start my talk on the stupidest happiness mistake by committing the stupidest presentation mistake, which is to reveal your punchline right away, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you right off the bat what the stupidest happiness mistake is. It's not to value material things over experiences. That's almost definitely going to bring your happiness down. It's not even to value career success over relationships. That's almost guaranteed to bring your happiness down. It's not even to get a really bad haircut and a horrible orange tan and think that you look sexy. That's not just going to bring your happiness down, it's going to bring the happiness of everybody around you down. Okay, the stupidest happiness mistake is this. It's knowing what will make us happy and yet choosing not to do it. What makes this mistake particularly stupid is that happiness is one of our most important goals, if not the most important goal. A worldwide survey of over 10,000 respondents from 48 different countries revealed that we value happiness more than we value success, intelligence/knowledge, or material wealth. And yet, we repeatedly sacrifice happiness for the sake of these very things, time and time again. And here's the real kicker. We do this dozens, if not hundreds of times every single day. Would you guys like to see an example of how we commit the stupidest happiness mistake? Okay. Imagine that you are in a wonderful relationship with a really great boyfriend who's nice, he's smart, he takes good care of you, but there's one area in which you would like him to improve, which is that you'd like him to lose a little bit of weight, okay? Just a little too plump for your tastes. Now, you give him lots of advice on how to go about achieving his goal of weight loss. You tell him to follow a strict regimen of healthy eating and swimming, etc., but he never listens to you, right? This goes on for a few months. Then one day, he comes running home to you and tells you that he's met somebody else at the gym who's motivated him to adopt a new lifestyle that's going to enable him to lose weight. Okay, it turns out that that person he's met is good looking and even sexy, you could say. In other words, somebody else has convinced him to adopt a new lifestyle, and as he tells you about this new lifestyle, it turns out that it's very similar to the one that you've been recommending to him, including swimming and eating healthy and so on. Okay? Somebody else has convinced him, somebody who's pretty good looking. So what should you do if you were really interested in maximizing your happiness? Okay, I'm going to give you two options. Okay, should you point out angrily to him that the other person hasn't told him anything new? Or should you pick option B, which is to pat him on the back and congratulate him for having figured out a way to achieve his weight loss goal? Okay? All right, so we asked a bunch of participants this very question, and that group of participants indicated that the happiness maximizing option is to pick option B, to congratulate him. Right? 86% of the respondents picked that option. So these guys know something very important about relationships, which is that in relationships, you can often either be right or you can be happy. You can't be both. Okay? So if people were really interested in maximizing their happiness, you would imagine that when they find themselves in this situation, a huge majority, right, around 85, 86%, would pick option B, right? So we asked a separate group of participants to imagine that they were in this situation, and rather than asking them, what would you pick if you wanted to maximize your happiness, we asked them to pick one of these two options. What would you do? What would you feel impelled to do? And it turned out only 72% said they would pick option B. So in other words, 86 minus 72, which is 14%, or 1 in 7 people seem willing to sacrifice happiness for the sake of being right. Okay? Now, you might think that this is a one-off situation. It's not that important. You know, who cares for relationships, right? What about career choice? What about a scenario which involves something serious like job choice? So we conducted a study in which we asked participants to imagine that they had a choice between two kinds of jobs. Job A, that's a meaningful job. They're going to be surrounded by colleagues that they really like, who are very supportive, but it doesn't pay a whole lot. Okay? Not that it pays badly. It doesn't pay. You can't lead an extravagant lifestyle with that salary, okay? Or job B, which does pay you a lot, but it's soul-sapping work, really horrible work, and you're surrounded by toxic colleagues who are out to stab you in the back, okay? So we asked them everything considered, not just short-term happiness, but also long-term happiness, your future plans, retirement plans. Which job do you think will make you a happier person? And a vast majority picked job A. 78% picked this job. Okay, only 22% picked job B. And so you would imagine that if people were really interested in maximizing their happiness in the context of career choice or job choice, they would pick job A if given a choice between these two kinds of jobs. But these very same participants, they were MBA students at a well-reputed school, when it came interview season, they ended up being less likely to pick job A than they had indicated initially. Okay, only 55% picked job A. Okay, in other words, 78 minus 55, which is 23%, or 1 in 4 people roughly, are willing to sacrifice happiness for the sake of a higher salary. All right? Now, we have noticed this tendency to sacrifice happiness for the sake of other things in a variety of different scenarios. And this tendency is so common that even if you're given a golden opportunity to ask for happiness, many of us fail to do so. Indeed, many of you sitting in this crowd are guilty of this crime, shall we say. You might remember that a couple of weeks back, I sent you an email with a link in it to something called the genie question. It goes like this. Imagine that a genie appears in front of you and grants you 3 wishes. What 3 wishes would you make? Right? You would think this is a golden opportunity to ask for the most important goal, right? Happiness. You would think happiness would be number 1. It turned out it wasn't even in the top 3. It wasn't even in the top 5. I'm not going to show you all top 5 wishes. Happiness came in as a distant 6th, with only 12% of you asking for happiness. Okay, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we not prioritize happiness over other goals when in fact we think that it is the most important goal to us? There are a few reasons. One of these reasons has to do with the lack of clarity about what happiness means to us. Okay? Happiness is abstract. It's not clear exactly what we mean when we say happiness. It's not specific and concrete. That's a big problem. Okay? A lot of findings show that when something is not specific, we tend to devalue it. Another reason is that we hold some negative misconceptions about happiness, that happiness is going to make me lazy or that it's going to make me selfish. It turns out, in reality, happier people are more productive. Happier people earn more money, for example. Right? Organizations are not stupid to give you money just because you're happy. Happier people actually work more productively. Happier people are also more altruistic. So you're less likely to come and shout at your kids or kick your dog when you've gotten a raise at work than when you've been reprimanded at work. Okay? But nevertheless, we hold these negative misconceptions. Final reason has to do with something called medium maximization, which is a very interesting phenomenon due to which we devalue happiness. In simple terms, it refers to seeking those things like money or fame or power that have long stopped providing happiness to us. So let's take money as an example. Up to a certain point, more money can make you happy. But beyond that point, money stops making you happy. So for example, when you transition from being a poor student into earning a lot of money, right, with your first paycheck, let's say 50,000 rupees a month, that's going to make you happy. Okay, getting the first raise, the second raise, the third raise, maybe all the way up to 1 lakh rupees a month is going to make you happy. But there comes a point beyond which more money is not going to make you happier. But nevertheless, because money used to make us happy at one point, we continue to chase it even beyond the point where it stopped contributing to happiness. Okay, so what do we do about this problem, right? What do we do about this problem of committing the stupidest happiness mistake and prioritizing other things over happiness? I'm going to outline a very childishly simple program, okay? 3 steps, simple 3 steps, okay? The first step has to do with creating what I call your happy things list. Just a little list of things that make you happy on a regular basis. For me, it is to hang out with my friends and family and also be productive at work. These things make me happy. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is to actually start doing those things on your happy things list on a more regular basis, right? Just these 2 steps alone can vastly improve your chances of not committing the stupidest happiness mistake. Why? Because by making a happy things list, happiness becomes less abstract to you. For me, it's a sense of love or connection that I feel with my family members. It's a sense of satisfaction and meaning that I get out of being productive at work. It's no longer abstract. The second reason is that when you make a happy things list, you will likely discover that you no longer harbor these misconceptions about happiness, that happiness leads to selfishness. It can't lead to selfishness if it means love, right? It can't lead to laziness because happiness to you is being productive at work. And a final reason is that when you start doing the things on your happy things list, you are less likely to fall prey to medium maximization because you're prioritizing happiness now. You're doing those things that directly lead you to happiness rather than to the means or mediums to happiness. Okay, but these two steps alone may not solve the problem for you, as I discovered 3 years back. Okay, I'd been working on the topic of happiness for over 7 years at that point in time. Okay, so I was expert on happiness, but I found myself committing this mistake. By the way, the third step, which is very, very important, is to ask yourself periodically, am I prioritizing happiness? Okay, this step is very important. Reason is, I'm going to tell you a story. I was at this glasses store looking for a pair of glasses to buy, and I found this really wonderful pair for $120. Okay, and there was a deal going on that said that you can get another pair of equal or lower value for half off. Okay, so I looked around, and there was this wonderful pair for $120, and so I started looking around for another pair, and I found this really wonderful pair, and I was about to buy it when I recognized that it was only $70, right? But it was the best of all the other pairs there were out there, and I was in a bit of a quandary. Should I go for this really good-looking pair, and even though it only cost $70, to me it felt like I was leaving $50 on the table. I could buy another pair for $120, right, for half off. So to me it felt like a loss. Should I go for this good-looking pair, or should I select a worse-looking pair just because it cost more money? It gave me more value for money, right? As I was racking my brain with this, a voice in my head popped up, and it said, Raj, you are a happiness researcher. You, of all people, shouldn't be committing the stupidest happiness mistake. You should select the $70 pair because that's the best looking one. That's what is going to make you happy in the long run. You won't remember how much it costs. No one else is going to ask you that question, right? That is the happiness maximizing choice to make, and that's what I made in the end. But it just goes to show how we can often be susceptible to committing the stupidest happiness mistake. Okay, so it's very, very important to also remind yourself of this step. All right, so I've told you what the stupidest happiness mistake is. I've also told you why we commit it. And finally, I've told you how to overcome it. And I started this presentation by making the stupidest presentation mistake. And I'm not about to end it by committing the stupidest happiness mistake. The happiness maximizing thing to do for me right now is to stand right here, raise my hands, and wait for a thunderous applause. Thank you. Thank you.